Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Meiser Sheni, Perek Dalid, Halachi Gimel. We're learning today Daf Lamed Ches. We left off on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph all the way on the top of the Amid Mamish by the brackets La'avdoi Ulashivchasei Ho Ivrim. Quickly going back to Halachi Gimel, the Mishnah said that one is allowed, and let's add the word lechatchila, to do what you can call a ha'arama, an act of a loophole. You can lechatchila tap into a legal loophole to exempt yourself as the owner of having to add the chomish when you redeem your Meiser Sheni, compounded with that which we learned yesterday, that midrabanan. If you don't add the chomish prior to adding the chomish, then the chachamim held back the act of pidyon itself. No, it's chomish is a big deal if you have to give it. And even though the Torah says you, the owner, has to give it, Hashem, for some reason, allows you, if you want, to do something legally which will exempt you from giving the chaimish. And what would that be? Very simple. Who is obligated to give the chaimish? So people say the owner of the produce. Let's add something. The owner of the produce and the same who owns the money that's being used to make the pidyon. If either the money or the produce does not belong to the owner, why would that be? Because he gifted it to someone else. Now, if I give something to someone else, why would I give something to you? I'm not going to have it anymore. So the ha'arama, which also could be translated as subterfuge, which is doing something conniving, doing something tricky, is that I'm giving either the money or the produce to a friend of mine, who, even though it's called a non-verbal contract, even though I'm not befeder saying that I'm giving you a gift, almanas lahachzer, I'm not even saying that, which, by the way, that's also a gift. It's self-understood by the chaver that whatever I'm gifting him, I'm only doing in order to get out of the chaimish. So that person will end up giving back whatever I gifted. But during the act of the pidyon, whenever the owner doesn't own both the money and the produce, then there's no need to add the chaimish. And as an example, who would be your chaver? Well, it can be any friend. The Mishnah says a chiddush that you can even give. Let's speak about the first option of giving the money. I'm using that as the first option, as we explained yesterday. We don't want for someone lechatchila to do something which appears to be going against what the Torah is saying. The one that's holding the money is the one that's doing the pidyon. So it's therefore, if I have an option of either gifting to the other, with the understanding that I'll get it back, the money or the produce, give the money. Because like this, the one doing the pidyon will be someone else, not the owner of the produce. But the other doesn't have to be someone who's not related. The Mishnah was machadesh that you can give it even la'avdoi ulashivchasei ho ivrim. Who can you not give it to? La'avdoi ulashivchasei aknanim. Now, by the way, the Mishnah also says you can give it to your son and daughter hagdoilim. You cannot use the other as b'noyu bitoy haktanim. I'm saying that for a reason, but let me go back to the opening. There's going to be two focuses in today's daf. It won't be related to Meiser Sheni at all. The first will be when you use the expression la'avdoi ulashivchasei hagdoilim. Think about it. Do we have in Torah a shivcha gedoila if she's Jewish? The answer would be no. That we're Eved, we learned the Rambam, we learned the Chitas. There are two ways of a Jew becoming an Evedivity, either by him selling himself, or by him, God forbid, stealing, not being able or claiming he's unable to pay back, and the Beis Din selling him as a means of returning the money that he stole. That has not fakir. That's by an adult. But a woman in Torah, there's no such a thing as a shivcha gedoila. Actually, the way she's called in the Torah is an amma ivriya. And an amma ivriya, the moment she becomes an adult, which means bas mitzvah, automatically she goes out free. Unless her master prior to that did the mitzvah of yiyud with her. We're not getting into that right now. So we're gonna have to speak about what do you mean shivcha ho ivrim? Don't forget the Mishnah says gedoila, not katanim. So we're speaking about an adult. There's no such a thing. And if she's a minor, the Mishnah says that a minor cannot be the other. The chaver has to be an adult. That's going to be one big sugya. we're actually the Gemara is going to use the words that there is a machlekes between the Chachamim from here, which means Chachmei Yerushalayim or Chachmei Eretz Yisrael, versus the Chachamim from there, from Bavel, regarding what legal ability does a minor have in making an acquisition, in acquiring an object, in affecting a kinyan. And the Chachmei Bavel will divide even minors into three categories, vis-a-vis how much understanding do they have, how much das do they have. This is fascinating. I know that generally, if you ask an aviv, where do we find that a minor can affect anything? You're going to say, well, there's a concept called mufla hasamach leish. We just learned this in the Rambam by the laws of Nedarim. We're not going to touch that right now. It's amazing. Yeah, we do have a mufla samach leish is someone who makes a neder, who makes a vow, which the vow will go into effect. It will be chal. Here we're speaking about hilchos kinyanim, and a chachmi bavel came to an understanding that once a minor has a certain amount of understanding, as we'll learn today, biblically, he's able to make an acquisition. We already remember from Bavli that midrabanan, rabbinically, minors can acquire. Because imagine a minor goes into a store on behalf of his family and he buys something. A minor finds a lost article. If we will allow the biblical law to stand that, according to the Chachmei Bavel, in certain circumstances, if he's really a minor, if he's very mentally underdeveloped, what he did is meaningless, someone will snatch the mitzvah out of his hand, and that will create a whole machlokes between his parents and the other person. So to avoid all of that, Vadai, at some point, the Chachamim gave a legal power to a minor to be able to affect an acquisition through making a kinyan. But the question is whether they are able biblically to acquire. We're going to see a machlekes Bavli Yerushalmi and how that's going to all play into the understanding of la'ap l'shivchasai. We're going to go back to this shivcha ha'ivri. There's no such a thing as an adult Jewish shivcha. It must be that she's a minor. She's a ktana. But if she's a ketana, how can she be considered another? Because she reached a certain age, perhaps, Labavli Yerushalmi, that will be the first part of today's shir. Second part of today's shir will be regarding the next part of the Mishnah that speaks about that you could, Evet Kanani, that an Evet Kanani, the Mishnah says, not Ivri, cannot be the other, because Yad Evet ki Yad Rabbi. In other words, an Evet Kanani does not possess an independent monetary jurisdiction. That's going to somehow lead us into the sugya of a shoyel. That we know that a shoyel, a borrower, who gets the most benefit by having the right to use an object without even paying anything. That's the definition of a borrower versus a renter. He, on the other hand, right, benefits comes with responsibilities. He has the most benefit. He has the highest level of responsibility, which is he's even chayiv ba'oinus. The question is, from when is he chayiv ba'ansin? From when does the borrower become a borrower? That will be the second part of today's share. In other words, if I'm lending you my cow, you want to use it to plow the field. Is it from when you take it? Is it from when you use it? Is it perhaps even from when I send it? Is there a kinyan needed for a borrower to become a legal shoyel, for him to be or she to be chayiv ba'oinus from that moment? This is going to be a fascinating topic. Don't forget that when I sell you an article, what are you acquiring? You are acquiring the article itself, and therefore you are allowed to use it. Since a lender-borrower, when I'm lending you something, you are not acquiring the item itself. You are only acquiring the right of use. So the kinyan on the item is not what you're doing. There is a Rishon that says in Bavli that the kinyan happens when you begin to use it. In other words, you have to make a kinyan on the tashmish, not on the making a kinyan on the item itself is irrelevant because you're not acquiring the item. And we're gonna that will be the second topic of today's shir. It's gonna be gavaldik. Let's dive inside. Asks the Gemara, simple kasha, what are we talking about? We're focusing on the female. If the Jewish, the Hebrew maidservant is an adult, which is what it sounds like, because the Mishnah says, because the Mishnah says that when it comes to children, minors cannot be the other, has to be adults. So then it doesn't make sense, because if bigedoyla, If Zachas b'simanim, there is no such a thing as a Jewish female maidservant. The moment she becomes an adult, which doesn't only mean age, it means age and bodily development, biblically, automatically she goes out free. Elomatz biktana. Okay, so to have that mitzias of a shivcha ha'ivri must be that she is a minor. Problem is, okay, what's the solution, Aviv? I'm giving my money, ideally. I'm giving the money to the other. But for them, and now I don't own the money and the produce. Why don't I own the money? Because the other acquired the money. If I'm giving my money to any minor, the minor doesn't acquire it. So if I give my money to the minor and they don't acquire it, who remains the owner? I remain the owner. Doesn't matter if the money is in my hand or in their hand. So I own everything. So I should be chayv and a chaimish. Katan, zacha. Can a minor acquire? Beautiful. Amar Rabbi Yudin bar Shalom in front of Rabbi Yossi. Well, let's try. We have to find areas in halacha where a minor has some power, has some independent jurisdiction. Tiftoir, it must be command Amar HaKatan Toirem. Look inside the Rashirilio, 7 lines from the top in the right column. So here is going into a machloikis that we have in Masechtas Trumais, and we learned this together, my friends. And as he writes over here, command Amar HaKatan Toirem, who is this man the Amar, the Tana Rebbe Yehuda Savar Hachi, the Perekama the Trumais, that even if the minor is the one that's separating Truma, the Truma say Truma. So perhaps, since Epes Koyach they have, the Kiv and the Kosher Litroim, Kosher La'aser, the Kosher Lifdois. Now there's a big problem with this. What's the problem, Aviv? The Gemara's question was not yet, how can the minor affect the Pidyon? That would be a good answer. They affect the Pidyon, Lamanda Amar, Katan Toidim. But before that, what needs to happen for a Chaimish not to have to be paid? For the money not to belong to the owner. But if I'm gifting, I'm the owner. If I give the mufti we're speaking here to a minor girl, here it doesn't matter the gender, I'm giving it to a minor, to a ktana. If she cannot acquire it, then the money is still mine. In other words, when Rabbi Yudan Bar Shalom gave that answer, he thought that the issue was not the issue which is the issue. He thought the problem is, okay, I gave it to the minor. How can the minor b'chal be separate? How can they do a pidyon? That's a good answer. No. That we find that command Amar katan toidim. So Amalei. So right away, Rabbi Yossi tells them, listen, my friend, you're missing the point. You're right. You're right that there is a man Amar that says that a minor can be toidim. Fafilu command Amar katan toidim. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, the problem we're having is katan zacha. No, a katan cannot acquire. What did you want to ask? I love this. This is a good kasha. This.
But isn't the right to separate trumos is not the same as acquiring?
No, it's not at all. Nicht at all. That cottons can own is easy. Let's go to Yerusha. No, it can be a minor that owns produce.
Wait, that's easier than?
Sure, separating truma and therefore subsequently meiser, subsequently pidyon is something a lot easier for a cotton to be able to do versus acquiring. Clear. And now we're diving into the sugya of, is there such a thing as a minor who biblically is adult enough to be able to acquire? Fascinating. So says the Gemara, Altat in the Rabbanon the Tamon. According to Chachmei Bavel, Tamon means there. Nicha, we will have a way how to explain the Mishnah. And right away, the Gemara shares the info. The Tamon Amrin over there in Bavel, they quote B'Shem Rav Nachman by Yaakov. It's very funny, this expression to me, because listen, Rav Nachman by Yaakov was a Amoira from Bavel. Okay, fine. But over there they quote him. Why over there they quote him? Why in Eretz Yisrael we can't quote him? It's not about who's doing the quoting. It's about where is the Chacham from. For some reason, it's consequential. Chachmei Eretz Yisrael were connected to a different type of understanding. But anyways, so over there they quote in the name of Menachem Bar Yitzchak that, my friends, listen to this. There are 3 categories in a minor when it comes to the power of him or her as a minor being able to acquire. And this has to do with levels of understanding. When we have a cheres shoita of a katan, I mentioned this many times. How do you define the shoita? According to Rabbi Zajac Shlita, we are all shoitim. You just listen to his class. He'll tell you in your face. And he got that. We just learned in the Gemara, we had these expressions. Like, what's a shoita? However you define a shoita, it's not consistent. Let's begin with that. There's a shoita cannot give a get to his wife. If someone becomes insane, it's a rachmanas on the wife. Not only because she's married to insane, because even if he were to agree to give her a get, he's not mentally, if he's halachically a shoita, he can't divorce her. By giving a get, the definition of a shoita is a person to whom you give money to buy something in the market, and he doesn't know how to bring back the right change. There's a braisa somewhere. So there's a whole story with that Tzemach Tzedek, that there was such an aguna, and she came with her husband who was the shoita. And the problem was that Tzemach Tzedek, aside of him being a rebbe, was a big halachic poisik. He was a poisik, bepoil. He wrote shuvas. People wrote him shilas from all over, not only from the Hasidic community. So the story is that he gave the man a ruble, a Russian coin, to go to the market to buy him nuts, apples. And the man, just to show how insane he was, he went out of the window. He was a meshugana. But he came back with the right change. And right away that Tzemach Tzedek told the Beis Din, he convened the Beis Din and he wrote again. Just saying that is not always the definition for other areas in halacha. So we're speaking specifically about how much mental understanding does one need to have to be able to acquire, to make a kinyan, to become an owner of something that prior to the kinyan you were not the owner. So category number one, this is the lowest level of intelligence. A child, a minor, boy or girl, you give them a nut is something of value. And they throw it away. They don't appreciate its value. How do you demonstrate you don't appreciate its value? You throw something in the garbage. When we throw our time away, what are we demonstrating? That we're a shaita. Rabbi Mendel made a good correction. That we're children, kinder. Very good. I take back the whole shaita. Delete the whole shaita. That's my brain. That's me. That's my shtus. Okay, we're speaking about minors. If you give him a nut and he throws it away. Now, 1 second. If the person throws everything away, it's not so bad. We're speaking about someone who the rock he keeps. Why would the kid keep the rock? Because whatever game he's playing, for that he needs a rock. He's keeping. In other words, he only has, let me word it my way, he only has subjective value. He only relates to things subjectively. Why would he keep the rock? Because whatever, he's playing a kugelach. For that he needs a rock. The nut is not good. But the nut has objective value. He doesn't see objective. Pure selfish. So that's the lowest level of kinyan, right? The egois he throws, the rock he keeps. This person, not only not biblical, not even rabbinical, can never affect the kinyan. Now, and therefore, hamoitzi biyadoi kemoitzi ba'ashma. The example we're going to give, I just gave it before, the whole tikkun ha'olam, that this person is walking down the street, this minor, who's still so young, and he finds a lost article, and he physically picks it up. He does hagbah, he does meshicha. Being that he cannot not affect the kinyan, not only not midoraisa, not midrabanan, any adult who finds it in his hand and takes it did nothing wrong. It's as if they picked it up off the ground. He's using the word ashpa, not in a derogatory way. It means that's normally where you find mitzias. The whole world can live off American garbage. That's the meaning of it. Now, the second, more development is egois v'hu noitloi. The nut he keeps. The rock he throws. In other words, this is someone who begins to understand objective value. Such a person, what's this din of this person? Is very interesting. Midrabanan, that's where the Chachamim said, Mipnei Tikkun Ha'olam, he makes a kinyan. Gezei lo yigazlam mipnei darkei shalom. That's called the darkei shalom. Now, what goes more than that? What's greater intelligence? The intelligence that everything has a purpose. Nothing should be thrown away. Why would he throw away a rock? Egois, utzuroir, if you give him a nut and you give him a stone, and he keeps both of them, now, I want to add another detail. it's not only that he understands that everything has an objective value, it's not his. He also understands that something that belongs to another should never be discarded. Fakert, anything that belongs to someone else should be safeguarded and returned. That knowledge. Everything has a purpose. It's nicht deiner. If it's mine, I have the right to determine that a stone I don't need. Nothing wrong with that. But if the rock is not mine, even though I don't see value in it, so what's not mine? I see this more as having this capacity of being more and more objective. So then, according to the Chachmei Bavel, that person who's a minor, boy or girl, gzeloi gazel gamur, which means that biblically they are able to acquire, but with one nuance. Even though they are able to acquire, this is very important. Even though such a minor is able to acquire mideh oiraisa, so if they find something ba'ashma, they pick it up, it belongs to them biblically. If I, an adult, take it, I violated theft, but they cannot acquire for someone else. This really goes into the issue of zchia. Is it mitam shlichus? We're speaking about someone who wasn't even asked to do something for the other. But what they are doing is not a chayv for the other. It's not schus and chayv, it's only schus, which is me seeing something in Hefker and picking it up for you. So normally the rule is, you don't even need to know that I did it for you. But how does it work? If zechia is mitam shlichus, a minor can never become a shliach. So the Chachmei Bavel held that even though he's able to acquire, since Chia Mitam Shlichus can never be done through a minor, even if the minor has enough das to acquire Mida Eiraisa. Now, just when it comes to, now, by the way, we don't need to have Avaloilach. It doesn't get in the way of using the answer. That will be the answer. The answer is, I gave it to the Shivcha Ha'ivri, means she's a minor, but she's a person that both egois utzeroid vihi noiteles. She understands that if it's not hers, she has to safeguard and return any item, whether she sees value in it or not. So therefore, when I give money to her, Aviv, she acquires the money. Now that she acquired the money, we already learned, Rabbi Yehuda holds, Bechlal, a minor can be Taidim. So therefore, a minor can be Ma'ased. So a minor can make opinion. Now, just b'negei of that, not everyone holds Chia is mitam shlichus. If you hold Chia is in a category by itself, so then such a minor can even do Chia. And that's Rav Huna. Rav Huna Amar, no, the moment I'm accepting what you're saying, that there is such a thing as a minor actually affecting a biblical kinyan. Because Chia is not mitzat shlichus, and we're not going to get into it right now because it's getting late. Okay. Now, it's already understood how this answered the question. The problem we're going to have at Rav Shlomo is that not everyone agrees with what they're saying b'shem Rav Nachman by Yaakov. So really, which will be Chachmei Eretz Yisrael. But before we get there, now that we opened up this topic, this is a typical tangent in the Gemara. We're getting a little bit off, and we're saying like this: Hakol moedim, even Chachmei Bavel, even the minor that egois utzroid v'hu noitlan. It's amazing. She'ein matonasei matana. Kinyan is one thing. Gifting is something else. Kinyan is acquiring. Makabel. Matana is mashpia. Don't confuse one with the other. And that's based on a pasuk. D'chsiv ki yitein ish. A pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim. Look in the Torah Eira Shalom. Ki yitein ish el re'eo kesav v'kelim lishmar. They were speaking specifically about a person who is giving to another, who's appointing another to be a shomer, to be a custodian. And they were speaking about a shomer chinam. And the din of a shomer chinam is that even Geneva Aveda, the shomer chinam is going to be exempt, right? A shomer chinam is only chayiv to pay by pshia. V'chulei v'chulei. So says Chazal, when it says ki yitein ish, matnas ish matana. Ve'ein matnas koton matana. So just to make that clear. So even though Chachmei Bavel say that once a koton reaches a certain type of understanding, he's biblical able to acquire Lav dafka, he's able to be zoicha lachedim, because of schir mitam shlichus, a katan can never become a shliach. Another din, just because a katan is able to acquire, don't think b'meila he can give a gift. One thing has nothing to do with the other. By a matana, we have a pasuk ish, and that's that. But now let's come back to our sugya. So everything is good according to Chachmei Bavel, that our Mishnah's exception, the Harama, la'avdai ula shivcha ivrim, shivcha ivri is only a minor. So what? She's already developed enough, so it works. The problem is divrei chachamim. I love the Gemara. Divrei chachamim. They don't say the chachamim from here. Chachamim stam means Chachmei Eretz Yisrael. Divrei chachamim. And Nishtam, who are the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael that argue with the Chachmei Bavel? It's Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan. Number 2, Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan. That what? Lo oilam ein gezei loy gazel gomer at sheyavish tei sa'aros. Biblically, a katan can never acquire, makes no difference how developed he is. Now, they agree with Mepnei Darkei Shalom. It's a Mishnah. So what? That doesn't answer our Mishnah, because if on a biblical level, a katan cannot acquire, that's the premise of the Havamina, then you can't use that Shifcha Ha'ivri as a Ha'arama. The premise that I just said right now will really be the answer. No, the Chachamim have that much koyach, but we're not getting there yet. But since the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael hold that Midoy Raisa, a katan can never acquire, turning to the Aflamet Chesamid Beis. And here again, the Gemara is schlepping out the question. Before we come to the question, which is obvious, we already said the question, says the Gemara Rababo, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, Hadad the Tema lo hoitzi mimenu bidin. Another detail, that the whole topic, the whole machloik is between Chachmei here, Chachmei there, whether the minor who egois utzroir v'hu noitlan, he found a mitzvah and he took it, and you took it from his hand. Just to know, this question is whether you are able in a din Torah to get it back from the ganef midin Torah or not. But just to know, Aval lahavi karben shvua, everyone will agree that if, look inside the Rashirilio, second line from the top in the right, im gazlai lekatan, if this gazlan, we're calling him a gazlan, no matter what, he's a gazlan. Because even if it's only rabbinically, you're not allowed to take something that was taken by a minor. He took it already. And if someone stole it from him, and then he was taken to Beis Din, this Gazlan, and he denied that he took it. We just mentioned this, right? I don't know, in the Rambam or in the Gemara. This whole, in the Rambam, in the Shuas Edus, Shuas Agzela. So the guy denies that he stole, and he takes an oath. Then he does tshuva, Sham Gezelois. Here, for sure not. The Nishbolei, Pturami Karben Shvua, because the Einish Boy al Tainus Katan. In other words, even Lachachmei Bavel, that you can be moitze it midin Torah, but that can never develop in a scenario where the Gazlan will also have to bring the Karban Hasham Gezelois, because who is taking him to court? The minor. When you deny a taina of a minor, it's not considered a taina. So it's very limited. Even Lachachmei Bavel, don't say, I learned in the Gemara that a minor is like really an adult. In this very limited area of him being able to acquire something. Even the Chachmei Bavel ad sheyavish tei sa'aros. So now the Gemara finally comes back to the kasha. According to the understanding, both B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan of Chachmei Eretz Yisrael, asks Rabbi Yosi again, since biblically a minor can never acquire, and since a shivcha Ha'ivri is only when she's a minor, the moment she's an adult, automatically she goes out to her freedom. So meyata filo la'atzmoi la'iske dichsiv el re'eyu achiyya l're'eyu. Okay, for sure. In other words, a gift, right? Speaking about a gift, what's the gift, Aviv? I own the produce. I own the money. Back in our case, I'm trying to get out of a chaimish, so I'm gifting it. I'm gifting it to the minor. Here's the source. L'chachmei Eretz Yisrael. In other words, for the minor to acquire it, the minor has to be able to make a kinyan. How do you know that the minor cannot make a kinyan? Because of this talk of this pasuk el re'eyu ki yiten ish el re'eyu kesav kelem. Ish is an adult. Re'eyu, like me, that when I give a gift to to a minor, they can't acquire it. The whole concept of a kinyan is only when the bequeather is an adult and the recipient is an adult. That's the source. It's time to know where you see from over here that there's no kinyan to a minor ever, even if they are very mentally developed. You got the kash. So answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi Barabun, B'Shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Rabbi Yitzchak. Mesechtes Gittin, just to know, when we have this whole topic about minors acquiring, making kinyanim, so one of the words that the Mishnah uses for a minor is piyutois. A Mishnah Gittin. So pasar lo b'shitas ha-piyutois. That's the whole topic about minors making financial transactions. The Chsiv Taman, it says over there, a-piyutois mikchan mikach, umimkara mimkar b'metaltalin. And that's a Mishnah. That Mishnah is in the sugya of Darkei Shalom. It means even Lachachmi Bavel, a minor who doesn't have that highest level, Egois Utzror V'Noitlan, cannot affect the kinyan midoiraisa, but they do affect the kinyan midrabanan. They could acquire midrabanan. So the Gemara says very simple. Why do I care, Lachachmi Eretz Yisrael, that midoiraisa a cotton can never acquire? It doesn't bother me. Once the Chachamim said that a cotton could acquire midrabanan, that's the koyach of the Chachamim. It's not pshat that on a biblical level it's not theirs. No, the Chachamim allows them to acquire it. And that's exactly what our Mishnah is saying. That if she reaches an age in which she's called the piyutois, in which the Mishnah says, midrabanan, that mikchan mikach umimkaran mimkar, if I gift such a kitana, who's a shivcha, money, she acquires it. I love it. So it's what we just clarified right now. In other words, she has to have a certain amount of understanding. The middle one in Lachachmei Bavel, that she's someone who egois v'noitol, tzroir v'zarkan. Not, in other words, they have a certain type of objective understanding. When we learned the sugi, I think we even spoke halacha l'maisa, what age that is. I don't know, 7 or 8, a certain age like that. Not younger than that. Younger than that doesn't do anything. Huh? Pnei Moshe 7, shkoyach. Okay, very good. 7 years old. So now I just want to say the following. Had this entire topic been discussed here in Ma'aser Sheni, originally it was not discussed. The problem is that when the Mishnah says, problem is that our Mishnah said you can do it, but not to the Ketanim. Our Mishnah, that's a state to everything we're saying. No, it doesn't fit well when you say that when it says, because the Mishnah says like this, who's the other? I know when it comes to the evidence, the Shivcha, the Mishnah never says the words Gedolim. I know that. But it sounds like from our Mishnah that it has to be adult children, and not la'avdoi and not libnoi l'bitay haktanim. The fact that the Mishnah makes ktanim in another category will be a problem, as we'll see. But instead of us focusing on our Mishnah, which we equally could have done, originally this whole sugya was learned in Masechtas Eruvin. Same topic. What's Masechtas Eruvin? They were speaking about who is the one who's going to make the Eruv, a shituv muvois. Now, of course, if everyone is mishtatev, done, but we all know the way we do it today is that one person can pick up food and acquire it, zchia, for everyone else. And over there also, the Mishnah speaks about a eved and a shivcha, ho'ivrim could do it. There, the Mishnah, mamish, the same expression. B'noi b'itei hagdoilim, avdoi v'shivchasei ho'ivrim, but not b'noi b'itei ktanim, and not avdoi v'shivchasei aknanim. Same diuk. So asks the Gemara, hold on. You're telling me that our Mishnah speaking about a minor doesn't fit in the Mishnah. And again, the Mishnah is a Mishnah in Eruvin, which has the same words of the Mishnah here. V'hataninam, did we not learn? But in other words, the fact that the Mishnah mentioning the children, I know not the shivcha, but the moment we said that b'noyu bitoy haketanim cannot be the ones placing the eruv on behalf of everyone else, right? Because they can't acquire it for anyone else. So how can you say that a minor shivcha could? It doesn't fit. When the Mishnah speaks about minor children, let me tell you better. The Mishnah should have said, well, what minor child cannot do it? A minor child that doesn't have the age of piyutais. A minor child, piyutais could. That's what we're saying. So when it comes to the children, the Mishnah appears not to make any differentiation. So it's a big doichik to put it into the Avdei V'Shivcha. And again, the Gemara could have asked exactly the question from Maisa Sheni. Just that's the way that this was discussed by Eruvin. And the answer is, that's what the Mishnah means. When the Mishnah spoke about B'noi Ubitoi Haktanim, it did not mean under Barabas Mitzvah. It meant under the age of Piyutais. That's what it meant. Answers the Gemara, Rabbanan, the Kesan and Amrin, Kan B'kotin Sheyesh Boidas. Kan meaning by the Shivcha, Ha'ivri, which means a minor. But she could, both here, acquire the money, make the pidyon. Over there in Eruvin, she can acquire the food and be zoichet for everyone else. We're speaking about someone, she is by enough das, even to only rabbinically be able to acquire. That's enough. I don't care if it's not biblical. So Zain. So what? The Chachamim says she could acquire. Khan, when the Mishnah says in the Sefer, hold on, why not? Here also, that's we're speaking about Kamba Cotton, She'ein Baidas. They don't even have the age of Piyutais. Rabbi Yerushalmi is saying that the Pnei Moshe says 7. That's the age. I think 7 or 8, whatever we learned over there. Rabbi Mendel is speaking the same thing with the Erev Tashilin. Same thing. Very good. You make Erev Tashilin. Now, by the way, if you're making it for yourself, you don't have to make a Zechiyah. The reason why we make a Zechiyah is because there's always the Chacham that forgets to make the Erev Tashilin no matter how many WhatsApps you send. And many people, myself included, went once where they forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin. So if that happens, you rely on the fact that whoever made it is saying Hareini Mizaka to the whole city. But who acquired it for the whole city? Ali Dey Acher. Now, when you have bar mitzvah sons, you have no issue. Rabbi Mendel is not there yet. So what happens? Could you make a kinyan with you? That's a practical question. And that's exactly what we're learning about. So let's go to what we learned about. Now I'll tell you more. By Eruv, the Eruvin is a din derabanan, right? Shleima Hamelach. So it's, in other words, it's even less problematic than our sugya. If the whole thing is a midirabanan, if the rabbanan say that a minor could acquire, the only question is we have a machloikas that even if a minor could acquire, could a minor be zoicha? So that we had a machloikas hamayiroim. If schia is mitam shlichus, ain't shlichus lakatan ever. So that's really subject. So if you have no one else in your house, I would say do it with your minor. At least according to some opinions, you were mezakeh to other people. And if not, you didn't lose anything. You're not making the bracha. The Shem Hashem is about making the eruv. The schia is something that you do before. If I got the nusach, it's in the siddur. You're mezakeh to everyone. The guy picks it up for everyone. Then you take it back. Now everyone has a shtickle balabatashkeit in your smelly whatever piece of fish, whatever else is used. Oh, your wife is much better because the wife is an adult. I think when you're giving her something for her to be you're giving it just like if another gives a wife something. Almanas, the husband should not acquire it. It works. You're the one doing it. I think, yeah. Do it through your wife. Okay. Now that it's late, but it's not late, but we still have enough time. So that was the end of the first sugya. The second sugya, like I mentioned, is la'avdai ulashivchasai haknanim. And in other words, the Mishnah is basically saying that here, minor and adult, that a non-Jewish male or female eved, they are not considered an independent entity, and therefore they cannot make monetary transactions. Whatever they do, yad eved ki yad rabbi. Okay, problem. Now we're going to Masechtas not Gittin, Masechtas Bava Metzia, and we're going to the sugya of a shoyel. So first rule is that from when the she'ela is initiated, from when it's chal, from the moment in which the borrower becomes a legal borrower, he is even responsible for an oinus, which is a huge amount of responsibility. But that's the agreement. So here's the case. Tamon Tanina. In Bava Metzia we learned. Hashoyel Sapara. Someone borrows a cow. Now, a vadai, when the borrower himself or herself picks up the cow, when they are moishech the cow, they acquire it. From that point, they're chayiv in oinus. What happens if the borrower did not pick it up? The lender on his own sent it biyad benoi, biyad avdoi, biyad shluchai. And the case in the Mishnah there is that before the cow went into the domain of the shoyel, the cow died. Who's chayiv? So there the Mishnah says, if the borrower never asked the lender to send it biyad the son of the lender, biyad anyone, he never asked him for that, the lender sent it on his own. There, the borrower says, I never got it yet. I'm pater. But the Yerushalmi doesn't say the Sefer, doesn't even write sometimes v'chulei, but the whole diuk is from the Sefer of the Mishnah. But if the borrower tells the lender, send me the cow with your son, now the lender sent it even with his son, even with his eved. Problem of it, even with his eved, biyad benoi, biyad avdoi, biyad shluchai, there the chiddush is that if the cow died on the way, the borrower will be chayiv. What's the problem? What did we learn in our Mishnah? That an eved kanani, yad eved, ki yad rabbi. So even though the borrower told the lender, send it, so what if the lender extended his hand? Like a basya baspari, and it went for a mile. If it's still in the hand of the lender, why would the borrower be chayiv? That's the problem. Don't we see from the Mishnah in Bava Metzia, that the eved is, in this case, considered an extension of the borrower? But how can that be? If the Mishnah says, by eved kanani, yad eved ki yad rabbi, answers the Gemara, who told you that in Bava Metzia, the eved is an eved kanani? Biyad benoi, biyad avdoi, biyad shluchai. It doesn't say eved kanani. So the easiest way out, Amar Rabbi Lazar, tiftar be'eved ivri. It's so good. I don't know why the Gemara has to give another answer, but the Gemara gives another answer. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Afilo tiftarenu be'eved kanani. Now this is very important how to learn pshat. And let me say the following. One way that some could understand this Gemara, but it's going to be clarified that it's not this, but to appreciate what it might be, is that when it comes to borrowing an item, no kinyan has to happen. That would be one solution. Since the borrower is not acquiring to begin with the item, the owner is giving the borrower rights to use. Who says a kinyan has to be made? That would be one way of getting out of it. Another way of getting out of it, now this is going to get more delicate, is that can I ask the owner to do mashiach on my behalf? The lender. Yad eved ki yad rabbi, so what? If the kinyan has to happen biyad the borrower, it's more difficult. It's still in the hand of the lender. But one thing is clear, that the type of kinyan that's needed to initiate the moment of she'ilah is even if, as an example, the borrower indirectly caused the animal to go. Like the lender opened up the door of the barn and the borrower called out. That's not a physical mashicha, but the borrower was indirectly involved in the animal coming to him. That can even happen if the lender is the one that did it on behalf of the borrower. That's the way we'll learn pshat in the Gemara. So, and even afilu tiftarenu be'eved, meaning an eved kanani. Tiftar, understand, interpret, but just like if the borrower tells the lender, Just like if the borrower tells the lender, Psachla, open up the door, let's learn Pshat that a kinyan is needed. And the kinyan that's needed is a kinyan Meshicha. But you don't need to have a physical Meshicha. You have to have something that the borrower did that indirectly caused the animal to come to him, which would be what? Just opening up the door. Let's just read the top line on Daf Lamed Tes. And this is V'tane Kain, that if the borrower hiniga, now leading a cow is bona fide Meshicha. There's no chiddush here, right? Hiniga is from the front, Himshicha is from the back. Now comes the chiddush. Even if Karalo bas acharav, now that's not a normal Meshicha, but that's causing the animal to come. Nischayev la l'shalem kishoyel. Yes, a kinyan is needed. It doesn't have to be a physical kinyan. Opening up the gate is enough. Calling the animal is enough. So if the borrower tells the lender, you send it biyad your Evet Kanani. Yad Evet Kanani is ki yad Rabbi. Now, it has to leave the domain of the lender. That's where it becomes a little bit difficult. You can't say that if it's b'reshus the lender, the borrower is chayev, because it being in the physical domain didn't leave yet. It's like when you open up the door, when does the animal become under the jurisdiction of the borrower? When the animal went out of the door. So yes, yad evet ki yad rabbi, but it's not in the rabbi's domain enough. Big chiddush this.
Isn't the whole point of why you need a kinyan Meshicha, because if there won't be a Meshicha, then it's going to be like a fire or flood. Not going to try to.
No. Rabbi Mendel is going into the whole sugya whether moist kindness or Meshicha kindness. Not negate to this.
Here by a shoyel, it anyway still belongs to the owner.
That's the key. That the Ritva writes in the Bavli that when it comes to any area other than in borrowing and lending, even when it comes to rental, a renter is considered like a buyer to a limited amount of time. During the time of the rental, you own it. By a borrower, these are his words, you never own on any level the item. You only get the reshus for its tashmish. Reshus tashmish is a non-tangible. So even when you do Meshicha on the physical animal, it's not about the Meshicha on the physical animal. It's that you began to be mishtamish with it on any level. So the moment it leaves the reshus of the lender, because of you are the owner of its tashmish. You're moving it for you. Even if it's in the hand of the